You just got hacked by North Korea. You lost about $620 million. It kind of seems like a little bit like a movie.
This hack that happened, which taught me a lot about leadership and really the grit that is required from the peaks of euphoria to the Mariana trenches of lows. I would say that's kind of my story in startups. For me, that turned out to be defense, because I think that defense is a massively important field to be building in. What we're seeing is that there is a massive asymmetric war going on, and it's all about the economic advantage. And we're seeing that these Shahed drones, which cost like $20,000, $30,000 to create, they are then destroying these massive radar systems that can cost upwards towards $1 billion.
What do you think, like, Europe does well? How do you think that we arrived at this position that we can't defend ourselves?
Yeah,
The last time actually that you've been on the pod, I don't know like how long ago it was, like, I don't know, like about 12, 24 months?
Yeah, around 2 years, I think, for sure.
2 years. Yeah. And you were kind of running Sky Mavis. You just got hacked by North Korea, which was like one of the largest hacks in history in the crypto space. You lost about $620 million. It kind of seems like a little bit like a movie. And now, like, you're a little bit like, with your new startup, I was wondering what are the top 3 learnings that you kind of took away from Sky Mavis and the hack?
Yeah, I think there are differences between what I learned from Sky Mavis and what I learned from the hack. I think starting from Sky Mavis, I think probably the most important thing when you're building a company is the people that you're building the company with. And I moved to Vietnam to build Sky Mavis with some really great people. But over time, things might change. But at the end of the day, I liked building with the team there. So there wasn't that the reason why I kind of left. But I think that's probably the biggest learning, I guess, being very clear on that. And also culture, values, the things that set the foundation for when you want to build something great. And then at the end of the day, it's also about, like, do people actually know what they're doing when they are in the company, especially as it starts growing. So when you're a small team, you're less people, it's pretty easy to keep track of what everyone is doing. But I remember at Mavis, we grew to about 300 people, and at that point it's like, okay, what are all of these people doing? Middle managers, those kind of things. It becomes a very, very different type of company. So yeah, at the end of the day, everything is about the people. That turns into outputs, and from there on out, you can grow.
Why is everything about the people and the culture? A lot of people say that, but why is that? Like, what are the what's the impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually super simple, right? I mean, if you have the wrong people in the team, how can you expect them to produce great results? I think it's just a function of the people that you have in it. So that's actually how I think about it. And then it's the most straightforward way of looking at it. So especially when you're such a small team, even just like one bad person who's setting the different course, or not necessarily asking the wrong type of questions, because I think, asking questions is great. But let's call it like if they refuse to disagree and commit, for example, that I think is very, very important. Once you set the course, everyone needs to be fully bought into that, or they actually need to find a different place to work. I mean, it's people can work in many, many different places. A startup that's very mission driven and very focused from the beginning. We just need everyone to be on the same page from the start.
And how do you assess people if they're the right fit?
Yeah, I think that's very difficult, and then it's certainly something that you learn over time. Sometimes it's a gut feeling, I would say, and then that's sounds kind of weird. Of course, references is something that you have to do a lot of the time, and then I also have standard questions that I check for during interview phases. But generally speaking, I prefer to work with people who I know are great operators, who I know have gone through hard things, and from there on out, I know that I can trust. Right? I think when you're building a startup, at the end of the day, what you're trying to create is kind of a movement that starts from nothing and then grows into something much, much bigger. And that energy that comes from the people that you have with you from the beginning.
Absolutely. I think like also if I observe like some of the best startups like Lovable, 11 Labs, what Elon Musk is doing, they're almost kind of creating like a cult, inside the company, like big believers, mission oriented. And I was wondering, like, how did you come about Stendr and this mission? Like, do you remember the moment in which, I don't know, you saw something? I would assume, I know that you have a background in gaming. Usually gamers, they get pretty obsessed about what they're doing, and really, really focused, like to the OCD type of personality. Like, did you see a statistic or did you see a problem that you just could not unsee it?
Yeah, I think maybe a quick word on my background. I have a background from the Norwegian Armed Forces, so I was there, and then I was in the Norwegian State Security, and that's even before I did anything in a startup environment. And then did Sky Mavis for close to 8 years, and I learned so many things there, both on the like really building something that is massive. Actually generated $1 billion in revenue. And onboarded millions of people and definitely built that kind of cult-like movement. So a lot of learnings there
Mm,
about, I guess winning from a startup perspective. And then also, going through some really hard times because even before we were winning, of course it was super tough. And then we had this hack that happened, which taught me a lot about leadership and really the grit that is required because I was tasked to kind of handle a lot of those things and kind of making sure that the that we were solvent. I mean, after the hack, so I learned a lot there. So from the absolute like the peaks of euphoria to the Mariana trenches of lows, I would say
mm,
that's kind of my story in startups. And then Sky Mavis is growing all the way to 300 people, and then now it's about 120, and the company's still doing fine. But for me, it was more last year I had a period of time where I was talking to my wife about like what's the next step, and I knew that we wanted to build a family. So it was very tied into that. And then she became pregnant. So I figured, all right, now I probably have to make a decision. Am I going to move back to Vietnam and then kind of build Sky Mavis alongside the rest of the founders? Or does it make sense for me to do something else? So yeah, that's why I decided to take a step back from the company and really try to find out what is it that I'm going to do with my time and life, and
mm,
something that I think is worth spending a lot of time on. Because from a startup perspective, when you're building a company, the amount of effort that you're putting in, it's just a massive amount of time and effort. So you might as well try to go for the most ambitious thing and the most meaningful thing. And I already knew that I didn't want to make, let's say, something like B2B SaaS or products that I felt like anyone could copy. So that I can kind of guess was my initial kind of outset. And then I started looking back into my history. What is it that I've done in the past? And what is it that I actually believe in and I think is important? So for me, I guess those were the initial thoughts. And then I really care a lot about geopolitics. I live in Europe as well, of course, now. And I was thinking, I'm going to be staying here, staying in Norway. So what
mm.
is it that I can do to really impact my family, my society, and then also hopefully Europe and maybe even the world with a company that I'm building? And for me, that turned out that to be defense, because I think that defense is a massively important field to be building in, and it has a great opportunity to build something big here. So yeah, those are kind of the initial thoughts.
Congrats for, the journey and all the success that you had with all the ups and downs. And I was wondering when kind of you landed on defense, that is something that is meaningful. How did you look at the market? Like, how did you look at, okay, how do you segment the market? Where is an opportunity where I think I can make an impact?
So I guess the first thing that happened after I quit or kind of left Sky Mavis, I actually traveled to Japan, mostly to walk around a little bit and try to see how, because I've done Sky Mavis for 8 years. That had been my life, it had been everything that I was doing. So I decided to just like go to Japan. I had some business things to do there, but also just to kind of walk around. And I was listening a lot to various podcasts. I was listening to Paul Malucky talk about Anduril
Mm,
and a few podcasts around Palantir. And I was figuring, this is massively important. And then, for me, it's kind of stacking out like, why is it the moment to make something in defense right now? I think it's actually,
mm,
it's parts. And the first of it is the geopolitical tension that we're seeing in Europe that is actually flowing down into the political sphere, where the politicians are defining that this is important. So that means that they are defining the importance, and the kind of the budgets are flowing in from there. So you kind of have the first thing. It's part ideological, but it's also part market driven. That
mm,
the market going to go up. So yeah, ideology and, a market that's growing. The second part is talent. The fact that when there is a market growing, when it's politically kind of driven and ideologically important, that means that you can get a hold of a lot of great people that maybe historically has not wanted to work in defense at all because of, let's say in the Nordics, you have a very liberal type of country. But right now, these people that are growing up, they look at the world in a very different way. So that means that you have the talent piece available. And then the third part is technology. The fact that you can now build a company using AI at the very, very core of the company, both when it comes to building the products, but also empowering the products themselves, it means that you can attack basically legacy companies that might have had an edge before. So you have those three things together, and then underpinning that is my background, I guess, as a successful kind of unicorn founder, who can from there on out capitalize up the company in a different manner that maybe many of these other defense kind of entrepreneurs are able to do, but then also be that beacon of talent so that I can get the best possible people to join me on this mission. Because if you don't have capital, if you don't have talent, there's no point in actually building a company from my point of view.
Absolutely. And I was wondering, like what's the first product? I know that you guys actually had the first field test of the Wacker sensor, like this Wednesday. I don't know, like how did that go? I was like, Wacker, I know that in Norwegian it kind of sounds like beautiful, but probably like it's another term behind it.
Yeah, actually, we are going to do the first field test tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Wacker means watchful or alert in Old Norse.
Yeah.
It's tied into what exactly the product does. So right now we are making let's call it just a very simple radar unit. And inside that radar unit, you have many cheap commercial grade sensors. And then on the device itself, we are doing sensor fusion. So, to describe it simply, let's say that there's a Shahed drone 150 to 200 kilometers out, right? Then a part of the sensor unit that we have is going to detect that Shahed drone. And the further along it goes into our perimeter, then we are going to be able to fill out, okay, what type does it have, like a different type of payload? Is there something unique about it? And we're able to hopefully predict where that drone is then going to go based on the data that we have captured in the future. And then we can deliver that information to the operator or to the effector itself so that they can take down that drone. And the way that we are trying to create this sensor is that we are adding many different sensor modalities. So there is like an acoustic part of the sensor. There's a RF part, so radio frequency. Then you have a thermic camera. And then you also have a seismic sensor. And the last one is a bistatic radar. All of these sensor modalities, they combine into a pretty holistic picture. And we are seeking to get the price down as much as possible so that, it doesn't matter if one of the boxes gets destroyed. And then to increase the range, we basically have a mesh network of many different of these boxes that go out on the battlefield. And then that increases the range massively and also the robustness of the product. So it's basically a sensor node. That's the easiest way to look at it. And it's built on top of our proprietary software stack, which then is also empowering that unit.
And why is radar important?
I think when you look at, when we were trying to define the problem space, what we're seeing is that there is a massive asymmetric war going on, and it's all about the economic advantage that any sort of nation can have on each other. And we're seeing that these Shahed drones, which cost like $20,000, $30,000 to create, they are then destroying these massive radar systems that can cost upwards towards $1 billion. I think we saw that happen in the Middle East. So and a really expensive radar, it gives you a lot of like exquisite coverage, right? It provides like the depth and it provides a lot of great things, but it's like also a massive target. So what you actually need to do is you need to start countering the opponent in the same way that they are attacking, right? So right now it's all about the cheapest type of drones that they can deliver en masse, right? So, in Ukraine, they might attack with like 600 Shahed drones in one go. So then how many of these sensors do you need out on the go? And how many of the kind of the defensive capabilities do you need to kind of take on that massive wave? I mean, it's super interesting to think about from a conceptual point of view, but it's also massively important that, we don't have too many of these exquisite, expensive systems when things gets destroyed so fast. So yeah, things change massively. I think as the war is progressing, and everything right now is about the cost benefit.
Absolutely. And when you look at the market, like, did you look at all the radars, for example, that you can purchase right now? And then you said, okay, like these radars don't have, let's say, the multi-modality that they should have. This is one. And then second, probably the price tag is just like very, very high. And you looked at the bill of material, and that combined with your proprietary software, you're like, okay, we believe that we can deliver this with a 10x reduction in price.
Yeah, I think that's almost the way that we're looking at it. I think, but to be clear, we will not be able to compete on the, let's call it the quality of the results that an exquisite sensor or radar or something that costs like, let's say $100,000 or something. Our node, which maybe costs like 2,000, 4,000, it won't be able to compete there. But that's also not where we are trying to compete. We are trying to compete by delivering like the most accurate information in a clear manner to solve the problem very, very specifically. And that means that how quick and dirty can we get it done? That's about it. And the reason why we're doing that is, when I'm looking back, in my career and how do you solve a big problem, right? So I like to draw a comparison to the hack, right? We were hacked for $600 million. It seems like you are kind of, oh shit, like there's Mount Everest in front of you. How are you going to, get that money back? You don't have all the money. It's a massive problem. So what you need to do is you need to create like a smaller, you need to kind of chop up the problems in smaller pieces and then take one step at a time, right? And that's actually how you go ahead and solve a big problem. So on our side, when we're looking at the product specifically here, this first thing that we're doing is just one step that is a required step if you want to build a massive company. So first off, we make this type of Wacre sensor unit. We get a lot of the data that we need to start training our models. We start hiring different people, and we actually build trust with the industry at the same time. The more trust that we build, the more capabilities that we have internally, the bigger the problem we're able to tackle in the future. And these things are then compounding and compounding and compounding. And I can use my kind of experience as an entrepreneur to leverage that into investors to raise more money than anyone else would find reasonable based on the traction that we have. That's the entire strategy.
And what do you think you're going to do like much differently since you had the experience with Sky Mavis? Now, what do you think you're doing differently here? It's just like the velocity of it, the capability to attract funds, the capability to have a very clear vision and to bring talent together towards that vision, or is it like a combination of those?
Yeah, I mean, startups are pretty much about two things, right? The speeds. How fast can you ship something, and how focused are you on that one singular thing to solve a problem in such a great manner that you find product market fit? You don't have a company or a startup unless you're actually solving a problem that somebody wants, right? Make something that people want. That's basically it. And how fast can you solve that? That's exactly what we're trying to do. And then at the same time, I'm not Steve Jobs here. It's not like I'm going to design all of the things that we're doing in Stendr, but I see myself as more of the strategist behind this. Can I find the right people, attract them into the company? Can I then also make sure that we have enough money so that we can solve the mission that we are aiming for? And then from there on out, can I also get the customers that's required to sell this product? So I'm very much on the commercial side of things, but of course I'm also tied closely into the product and the delivery of those things, because that's very much a lot of what I care about. But I also know that I am not going to be like in the details, making the entire specification for that specific drone or for that specific target. Like that is not within my area of expertise. And I think that is where probably I am good enough at understanding my own personal limitations. And this is interesting because a lot of startup entrepreneurs, the more success they see, or I think especially the technical people, the more success they see, the easier it is for them to think, oh, I can just learn that and I can, do those things. And while that might be true, it's really difficult to maybe learn a specifically new discipline rather than just focusing on what you are super, super good at. I'm a big fan of learning new things, but I like to say that you have an underlying kind of competency level that you can then build on top of, which is exactly what I'm trying to do at Stendr.
Wonderful. It's like how Warren Buffett kind of put it, stay within your area of competence. And I like the way that you put it, that the more success you have, maybe your confidence kind of increases and you think that you're good at all these other things that maybe actually you're not really excelling. I mean, of course you could learn it, but it's not within the area of competence.
Yeah. What's your zone of genius? I think that's basically it. And I've clearly defined mine, which is on the commercial side, attracting the talent. I carry the story of Stendr. I make sure that we have enough money. but I'm also sort of a janitor. So if there's a problem that someone needs solved, of course, I'm not, too big. I mean, I'm going to go in there and try to solve that problem. My job is to make sure that the people who are actually building the thing, that they don't have the problems because of whatever, shitty thing that happens, right? And I like to think about it, being the CEO of a company is very, it's sad because sometimes you only see the bad things that's happening, because you
Hmm.
always go from one problem to the next, to the next, to the next, because you are, at the end of the day, the person who's responsible to solve those things. But the things that are working in the company, you probably don't have too much time to focus on those because, hey, they're just working out anyway. So that to me is like something that I guess is a little bit sad, but at the same time, that's a part of the job.
Absolutely. And how do you see the defense tech problem in Europe? What do you think like Europe does well? How do you think that we arrived at this position that we can't defend ourselves? And like, how do you see the problem now in Europe?
Yeah, what does Europe really do well? I think, the jury is still out on that. I'm not sure if we're actually doing that many things. I think we're doing a better job at cross a country collaboration. So I think that's all right. But the market is still quite segmented in a way. I mean, the German market is specifically one market. I think the Nordic market is kind of, differentiated too, probably more so in the south of Europe as well. But what I'm hoping for is that NATO will be able to say that, if you are, let's say, if you have been vetted by NATO, that means that you can sell throughout all of these markets. So you try to create like more of a holistic market, even though
Mm.
you have the European Union and such. There's still like it's quite difficult from what I've learned if you want to sell to many different type of countries, because you need to learn those kind of regulations and be compliant with everything that they are doing, which it really means that things have a tendency to take long. But at the same time, there's a big sense of urgency right now that's happening, which has a tendency to kind of slow down on those regulations. It means that there's an opportunity for startups as well. So my job here is actually try to position the company. First of all, we obviously build great products, but we need to be positioned for when things actually start opening up a little bit, so that we
Mm.
can take a kind of take that pole position, especially in the Nordics, to kind of go for that neoprime state.
And how do you see like what's the vision here, right? So like you hear like in the startups, there's like one product, this is the wedge, is going to be very competitive on this niche problem that we try to solve. But then like what's the vision with Stendr?
Yeah, I mean, so the mission for Stendr, or when I created it, Stendr in Old Norse, it means to stand. And in Norwegian, a Stendr is something that's within a building, right? So this is my room. In here, beyond behind the wall, you have like this thing that's supporting beam, right? So I'm
Mm.
building this company so that it can be something that supports the values that we have here in Europe and also in NATO, to make sure that it can protect our democracies, right? And the way that's kind of the massive ambition for the company, to be a player in that space. And then it's all about like, how fast can we get there? Uh, I think it's interesting to look at a week, right? 1 week of the year is 2%. So how much can you get
Mm.
done in 2% of the year? That's the level of urgency that you need to have. And to me, that's the things that I try to implement in the company, and everyone that's working with me and that wants to work with me, right? They need to have that sense of urgency. And I think that's also what Stendr is about. Being a neoprime, which is the target, is like you want to do things in a different way than these like larger primes like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and those kind of things, right? You use your own money, you use your own technology, and from there on out, you try to make it cheaper and better for the governments around the world, and deliver great results there, rather than doing the thing that they've done in the past, which is it's a cost plus basically. So at the end of the day, there
Mm.
you end up just you're incentivized to spend as much money as you can. And I think that's not what this is about. I want to make sure that the products that we are delivering, that we can do it in a fast way, and we can do it in a way that is also cheaper than what they're able to do today. And the way we do that is we go first principles, right? Why is something true today that it wasn't true yesterday?
Mm.
When we look at technology, when we look at people, all of those things are connected.
And how do you create urgency on a weekly basis? Do you have some tricks? Have you tested different things to see what works, what doesn't?
I usually actually think that unreasonable timelines
Hmm.
is a good thing. If you have like, let's say a timeline out for, oh, we're going to do the first field test in like 6 weeks, things have a tendency to stretch out and fit the timeline that you set. But
Yeah.
like actually the first timeline that we set for the field test was like 4th of May. So we already missed that a couple of times, but that's fine because I want to have unreasonable senses of urgency. And then eventually I think, we were able to like learn each other more so that we don't set like things that we are obviously going to miss. But if you set too long of a timeline, the problem space is you end up spending that amount of time. And I think also to me, it's about showing up and being there, right? So I think the job of a founder or the founding team is to be that source of energy and to show people how it's done, right? So you are
Hmm.
constantly kind of, people are judging you based on your energy, your behavior. What is it that you do to drive the business forward? So for me personally, like I'm not in the office every single day, but whenever people see me in the office, I want them to feel like, oh, right now there is like a massive amount of forward acceleration, right? That something is happening when I'm here that they would want to do better because they see me. And I think
Hmm.
that's a really good thing because at that point I can function as this kind of motivating beacon for them. And I think that's also a lot of what a startup is about at the end of the day, and kind of going back into that like whole cult like movement, right? The only way to really build something that's larger than kind of life is to treat it like that. Is to treat it like something that when I'm looking at Stendr, I'm not saying this is a company that's going to be here for 10 years or 20 years. I actually want this to be for 100 years, hundreds of years. Like this could be something that really is here for a very, very long time. And that means that we all have to take it super seriously.
So your investor, Louise Boucher, wrote in her Substack in October that interception is going to be the backbone of European defense spending, and that the first European defense decacorn will be the company that can demonstrate interception at scale.
Mhm.
Why do you think interception is so important?
You know, to me, it's about the results at the end of the day, right? So, and also about capacity. So interception, basically, you have to deliver and take down the what the opponent is doing, right? And that is an ever moving target, which is why
Hmm.
it's so important, and which is why it's a massively difficult problem to solve for. And especially when you talk about like reducing the price points for some of these interceptors or some of the missiles or whatever else that might be. So I think that's basically it. Is you need to have a team that is ever evolving and adapting to what's happening on the battlefield, and from there on out can change munitions or change the effector or whatever else that might be to kind of suit what's happening on the battlefield today. And that also means you need to have like a really clear connection to the radar systems that are out there. And overall, you need to be very, very adaptive, which is why I think she's talking about that.
And also, like, just to understand, like, on the product level, like, how would it work? Like, would you have like multiple nodes of Stendr across the battlefield on the like on the borders? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. So the product in itself it's a multimodal sensor network. So these sensors they are placed. Let's call it, yeah. You can place them across the border, and then they have detection outwards and upwards. And from there on out, they see when drones are coming in, and they take that information and they create a holistic picture of that drone and where it is in the world, and they send that down to either the effector itself, basically the tower that shoots it down, or into kind of a command and control system, which could be made by us, which could be made by anyone else, right? So we try to deliver that information in a NATO standard and a very open standard so that they can catch that. But of course, like our long-term sales pitch is to make sure that we have our own command and control system, which is able to visualize that even better, and
Hmm.
that people can opt in to use that if they want to. And I think that's like an upsell opportunity, right? So we both have the software inside of the device itself to do the sensor fusion, which is difficult. And then there's another issue between the timing of the different nodes if you do have like a very, very long network to protect, for example, the border. So there are
And
many different like hard problems to solve with this product as well, where you might need actually to have another node in the back that then that does all the timing stuff. But it's really amazing to go very deep also on product and to learn more about the difficult technical problems.
And do you sell this to governments?
Yeah, so initially, our go-to-market for the product was actually tied to the Norwegian government because, I'm Norwegian and I have a lot of contacts here in Norway. People know me. And even at a political level, I know quite a few people. So I figured maybe I can use my kind of connections here to hopefully, skip some procurement cycles or, make it a little bit faster. It turns out that unless you are very, very closely connected to the military, probably not a big surprise that, the procurement cycles are very, very long. So what we've decided to do is, and I think this is the most reasonable path for most of the defense startups, is just to ship it in Ukraine, work directly with Brave One and some of the Ukrainian brigades. Right now, we're working with the Azov guys. It's still quite early on, but we're hoping to be able to kind of alpha test the unit with them to make sure that it actually solves the problem for them in such a deep way that they would potentially be a hero customer for us in the long term. And I think, the key there is like how fast can you build trust with some of these guys that they can see that you have skin in the game. So from our side, we're like, okay, I'm going to travel down to Ukraine. I'm going down there. I won't say the specific date on the podcast, but I'm going down there. I'm going to meet those guys and I'm going to be there quite frequently because I think it's important that they see my face and that they know that we're going to be there. A big problem, I think, among startups is that, people have a tendency to run out of money. If you are doing business with a smaller company that's likely to run out of money, you are then losing out quite a lot because it takes your time and, maybe they won't be able to deliver. Every time I'm talking to someone, I want to make sure that they understand that we are here to stay. We have enough money to actually deliver the thing that we're doing. And the best part, we are doing what we are saying that we are doing. And that's obvious when you're saying it out loud. But many people, they don't have the capacity to follow through on those things and they oversell and underdeliver. And we saw that happen so many times with Sky Mavis too, because we had all these like great community members and they really read through everything that you're putting out. And it's always very tempting to oversell and say, oh, okay, the game is coming on date XYZ. And if you then fail to deliver, and if you fail to deliver many times, then you start losing trust, right? And really trust is the foundational thing that you need to have. And not only in defense, but with friends, with family, like trust is that really binds us together, I think, as humans and even for teammates, right? So I want to make sure that we are not trying to oversell this to those people who need it the most, but really try to be at the same time, okay, this is the capacity that we are delivering. This is when it's happening. And we're really focusing on solving your problem as fast as we can.
Absolutely. And I think I think like to your point, like even like you would be surprised how many professionals are not doing that. They're saying some things and they're just not following through. Like you just be surprised. And to your point, it's just so simple, but this is a way that you can build trust with someone and show that actually you will be doing then also in the future the things that you said that you'll be doing. And it kind of seems that Ukraine also is the frontier in defense tech. So if you want to build in defense tech in Europe, ideally you should go and do something in Ukraine because there is the frontier technology. I was wondering, how did you go about in doing business there? Who did you call?
Yeah, first of all, I want to touch a little bit on what you said related to actually being there. And to me, it's very similar to what happened in Sky Mavis because, the way that you learn things, right? Action produces information. You need to be in the market to learn as much as you possibly can. And it's kind of strange to this is actually why I don't like companies that are in stealth or whatever. I think that the sooner you can get in the market, the sooner you can start learning, the faster your iteration cycles on the next product, on the next product, on the next product. And that then at the end of the day, you might have product market fit, right? That's how it works to me. Nobody really just puts out something that they've made in isolation in like a lab, and then it's really great. To me, that happens like very, very rarely. I think it's more about like actually being able to test and iterate and then deliver that type of result. So to me, this makes a lot of sense to do. And the way that we got involved in Ukraine is like we actually worked together quite closely with a couple of defense clusters here in Norway who are then advising us. And I really think that's great. So DI5 are the ones that we are working right now with. But also at the same time, Norway has a lot of great relationships with Ukraine. So Brave Norway, for example, is a thing that's coming up here. And I've been at a couple of these meetups here in Norway where there's like a Norway and Ukraine meetup. And then there's also a couple of conferences here where, we had the brigades here and I met them also face to face. So I think this is a thing that you need to show up and be there. and eventually then also kind of deliver something of value. So yeah, that's how we started out, and it's still early days for us as well. I want to be clear about that, and we still have a lot to learn. But I'm asking people to judge us based on the speed of learning. So I always think of myself as like a learning machine. And when we built Sky Mavis, didn't know anything about startups, didn't know anything about raising money, so really had to learn everything from scratch. And I think it was a massive learning experience. And of course, this company will be the same way, because we don't come into the fence from like deep industry expertise, right? So what is it that we can actually bring to the table? And I would say like we think a little bit differently. And obviously, I take a lot of my background from gaming. So what I would say is, for example, when we are trying to design our products, we always look at a point of like, okay, how long can people look at these products before they get tired? And I think it's more of a design principle where, in gaming, it's called you get into a flow state. Basically, that you can play the game for like 10 hours without thinking. The time just flies by. And if you're looking at like the point from an operator perspective, how do you make sure that the operator who's using your interface or whatever, that they can just spend a lot of time looking at that, and the most accurate information is coming up in a very clear way, and they don't get tired in their face, in their eyes, but the most accurate information is there at all times. To me, that's really at the core of when it comes to design principles.
And how do you go about learning? I think like Joshua Waitzkin, he has like a great book, The Art of Learning. So I think like that was like one of the books that, kind of tried to distill how do you go about learning and growth mindset. Like, do you kind of save time in the day? I don't know, like an hour or two just to read like research papers, or how do you go about learning?
Yeah, my mind really doesn't work like that, where I can sit down and specifically read for an hour. I would say it's more, and I wish it did, because then it would be more, clear. To me, it's actually very driven by curiosity. That I'm curious about a specific topic, and then I can go deep. I read a lot of articles, I listen to podcasts, but I also want to talk to people. And I find that when I'm speaking things into the world, my thoughts refine, and I might change my position based on the opposing person. So I would probably say that I hold my ideas very strongly until they are proven false, and then I don't have an ego in the sense that I can easily drop those and I can change my mind, because these ideas or these things that I learn, they are not like a representation of me as a person. They are a representation of what I've learned, and that is ever evolving, right? So I think it's hard to say that, or it's kind of weird to say that, or to have like an ego around, oh, all of the learnings that I have, that's exactly who I am. No, these things change. Like you can learn more at all the time. So I think it's a very high ego to think that you are kind of finished learning, because the world changes, and I think that's really the key. Even when I'm looking back at Sky Mavis and the hack and the things that happen when you're building a business, I think particularly maybe investors, they have a tendency to almost trick themselves into thinking that this thing is de-risked, or this investment is de-risked because they have product market fit, or certain things have changed. In reality, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So you're always investing in the people and their ability to adapt to that market situation. So that's it, basically. That's what investments are about. That's what the team is all about. And I think that's really at the core of it, and why I think every time, I think I've invested in 20 different startups by now, and the core thing that separates the people who are doing good and doing bad, it's like, it's the people that are able to adapt and find a solution when things seem like super bleak.
Yeah, I mean, like you've referenced in this like 40 minutes, you've referenced like Zone of Genius, which actually there is a book. So I don't know if actually you were referencing because you kind of read the book. You said action produces information, which I remember it was kind of Brian Armstrong, from Coinbase, and then also Mark Andreessen's strong opinions loosely held based on new information. So it kind of seems that you absorb a lot of information from podcast people, and then you see kind of what makes sense, and then you're very good also at speed at executing. It makes sense. Okay, we execute, you gather more information, you execute again, and that kind of creates more information.
Yeah, I think it's, and I don't have that ego in terms of saying, oh, no, I have to have like all like original ideas for literally everything that I do. I think it's okay I love learning from people who are better than me. I wish that there were more entrepreneurs in Norway who had gone down the path that I'm doing, so that I could learn even more from them, because that's the best. That's the best thing that I do. Right, when you get inspired by someone, when someone brings energy into your life, I really think that's the key. And if those people are not like close to me at all the time, then I need to kind of find my hit somewhere else, right? And that to me is a lot about finding the right sources where those people are, whether it's Twitter, whether it's podcasts or other places, books that they are reading, right? Or that I'm reading. So yeah, I think that's just the way that you learn.
Absolutely. And also, and Anduril just announced a couple of days ago their Series H. They raised $5 billion, which brings the valuation to $61 billion. The round was led by Thrive Capital and Andreessen Horowitz. When you look at the market in Europe, it's just very fragmented. Also in the procurement, probably also in the standards. How big do you think is the market in Europe? And how do you think the fragmentation problem should be solved? Is there an opportunity for an integrator here?
Yeah. So I guess, European as a defense market right now, I think it's projected to be about 30 billion a year, according to PwC. They think it's going to go to 150 billion euros a year in the next 10 years. So there's definitely growth here. But when I'm thinking about like Stendr specifically and the market access that we have, we are, let's call it an Arctic prime in a sense. So if you flip the map, right, and then you try to look at Norway and our kind of strategic position, like we have the second biggest coastline in the world. We are hyper geographically important in terms of our strategic position based on the Arctic region, right? So then the products that we put out, if they are working in the Arctic, they should also work, I guess, across the world. But it's a great position to be in, because not only can we kind of work with the Americas, who are a strong ally of Norway, but we can also kind of be that bridge into Europe. And it's much better if we can create a dependency from them rather than we have a dependency when it comes to America. And I think that every single nation will want to kind of buy, or they already do. They want to buy from something that's more local than let's say international, right? So we're moving into this world where the logistics, everything needs to be buttoned up in the sense that you cannot have dependencies across the line of, let's say, you cannot kind of get your chips or whatever from Taiwan, or you kind of use Chinese manufacturing. We are really trying to be very specifically European focused, so that we have our factories here, for example, if we are going to make something in a physical realm. And then software-wise, like where are the servers set up? Should they be in Norway, for example? These are things that are very, very important if you start to think 3, 5, 10 years into the future, because right now we're setting up the foundation. When you are creating a foundation, like if you set the wrong foundation, it's really difficult. You need to go back and you need to restart everything. So to what degree can I use the experience that I have to really kind of make sure that that we're not making any massive mistakes, for example, that we did in Sky Mavis. And that I think it's not because Sky Mavis is a bad company. It's mostly because we were worse entrepreneurs, because we were so young in our entrepreneurial journey. And that's almost 10 years ago, right? So I think you learn a lot over time. And I'm really trying to, when I came into Stendr, I'm like, okay, how fast can I put all of the information that I have in my head from building Sky Mavis into this new company, into the people that I work with, make sure that I have the best type of investors, make sure that we are really pushing every single boundary that we have so that we can deliver value as soon as possible, right? And I think that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Wonderful. And if we change gears and get personal, I mean, with Sky Mavis, you've been like through different type of market cycles. At one point, you're like one of the most valued crypto gaming company in the world. It was a lot of hype, a lot of money kind of went into the industry. Then that was not sexy anymore. Like, what did that teach you, about hype and demand, and maybe how do you go through tough periods?
Yeah, I mean, so Sky Mavis, we raised a Series B around at 3 billion. At the same time, I think OpenSea raised at 9 billion, and we had more revenue than them. I think we could arguably have raised at a much higher valuation as well. I actually didn't want to do that, because I always believe that in a negotiation, it's good to actually kind of make sure that both parties feel like they're waiting a little bit. and you leave some on the table so that, you can grow and, people then become stronger allies down the line. And we didn't raise because we needed the money either. We raised a round because we wanted to have strong allies and a strong board, and that we would be set up so that we can start doing acquisitions when the tough times happen. Because I know that crypto is very volatile, so there was a strategy behind it. Unfortunately, we had to take a lot of the money that we had, and we refunded all the customers with the money that we had on our balance sheet. So it became a little bit of a different play. But at the end of the day, it's still about building robustness in the team, the organization, and in yourself. And I think if there's one thing that I've learned when you are going through really tough times, it's like how robust is your family, is your life, is your company, and then you can kind of extrapolate, into the nation, into kind of Europe or whatever. Everything is about that to me right now. I want to make sure that this company is set up to handle really, crisis. That means that we have to build the architecture in zero trust, right? That means that, that we have a strong relationship with investors, with customers, that they trust us because we're delivering, and that we are then set up to handle really tough times. And that's how you actually build something that can last. Because, shit is going to happen no matter what. Like, there's always something. Suddenly you might you hit some compliance. Now there's something that happens in the logistical pipelines. Maybe now someone in your founding team is going to leave. There's a million things that happen when you are building a startup that's impossible to predict. And it could be all of the things that I said, or it could be none of them, or something even more, dire than that, right? So if you know that shit is going to happen, then how do you actually prepare for those things? I think that is like where the culture and where, the energy from the founders are coming in, and how calm are they during those type of situations. And, that's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of not only myself, but every single founder in Sky Mavis, and actually the team that we had there, that we were able to kind of calmly, go through the crisis that we did, and then really kind of, try to solve the problem one step at a time. And it really taught me so much. And of course, the team at Sky Mavis, they're still really close friends of mine. I'm still on the board of the company. And I still would have been building in Sky Mavis if I didn't, if I was able to move back to Vietnam, because I also think that it's very important that you see people face to face, and that you can bring that energy to them, because everyone has, rough days. There's a rough period, right? So as a founding team or founder, like, where are you going to get the energy when times get tough, right? That is the people who are closest to you.
Absolutely. And why do you think some entrepreneurs fail to reach the stage you did?
I mean, it's a million things. I think entrepreneurship is a lot about timing, and also luck and scale, right? So I don't think any entrepreneur has made it without all of those three things, right? So skill, timing. I mean, you have to have both. If you're in the wrong market, for example, that's obviously terrible, but that's a decision that you can make. That's like skill, I would say. But yeah, everyone has some kind of, let's not say a lucky break, but something happens, right? When you're in the market. Now I met that guy. Now I met that guy. Something happens, like a deal is made, right? And I think that to me is about being present. And as I said, like doing stuff. And when we started Stendr, we didn't necessarily know what type of product we were making, because, as I said, we don't come from the industry. So how do you then find something that might end up having product market fit? Well, you need to talk to people. You need to start like hypothesizing and testing your different ideas. And that actually also involves, looking stupid. And making bad kind of assumptions, and just being out there and actually daring to say those things that don't always make sense. And also understand again that those ideas, they're not necessarily a reflection on you. It's a reflection of where you are today, not where you will be tomorrow, right? So dare to take that chance. And sometimes you're going to say stupid things. Sometimes you maybe do something that's stupid, but that's all right too. Like, as long as you learn from it. And I think that's really at the core of it.
Absolutely. I was talking with this founder at Slush, and he was just about to go on stage to have a speech. And he tells me, like, Kellen, as a founder, like, either like you look very stupid for the first 5 years, and then you look like a genius. There's no in between. And to be a founder, you just need to dare, to go out there, to say your opinions, to build, to execute, to your point, to look stupid. Right? Until you start winning, and then you look like a genius. But then a lot of people don't dare to go and be a founder or to try things out, because you might look stupid. And people don't like looking stupid.
I mean, it's an ego thing, actually. And I think, to me, I'm okay that people might think that I'm whatever, right? I'm confident enough to say, all right, I've done some good things, but that does not mean that this thing is going to be amazing. I mean, I firmly believe that. Other people might think that, all right, I'm in deep water. I think that's fine. Like, I love proving people wrong. I definitely
Mm.
came out of Sky Mavis with a chip on my shoulder too, because I wanted to build things my way as well. Because when you're a founding team of like, 4 or 5 people, then naturally it means that you make a lot of decisions in a more democratic way almost. And I think that that's not necessarily always the best idea when you want to build a company. So to me, it's like, okay, well, now I'm the CEO. I'm going to do things my way. I think that's really great. But obviously, it's very different, of course, as well than when you have like more equal type of founders.
And how much money did you personally make with Sky Mavis? Like, did you sell at the top? Were you trying to do some secondaries? Did you wait? And then how do you stay grounded? Because I would assume that you're quite successful. How do you stay grounded and humble? So then you don't think, oh, I know everything. Like to our discussion previously is like, oh, I had the success. That means I'm just so great. And
Yeah, I definitely don't. I'm not humble in every single way, by the way. I have a very
that's
strong
good.
opinion. I have a very strong opinion on many different things, and particularly what's within my, zone of expertise. But I also understand that there are many things that I don't know that I need to learn, and that I can learn a lot of different things from many different type of people. But if people then are trying to teach me about things that I know really well, that is not always a good match for me.
Hmm.
Mostly because I feel like I'm very strong about certain things. But yeah, I mean, coming out of Sky Mavis, and because we had our own crypto tokens and we took some secondaries at the B round, most of that stuff was actually tied into, because we have a wealth tax here in Norway. So you kind of have to do that. So you have to be strategic. But in hindsight, I'm quite glad that we took some secondaries.
Mm.
And also that I sold some tokens. So I didn't have to start this company because I could also just chill. And
Mm.
but I don't think that is like very or just be an investor or something like that. But I didn't really want to just invest in things because I've done many angel investments, and what I frequently find is that a lot of these guys are sometimes doing things that I wouldn't do. So I try
Mm.
to tell, oh, I've done this stuff before. Maybe you should do things in another way. But oftentimes, founders, they want to do things their own way. And I really respect that because, of course, I'm the same way. But what I actually learned there is like, maybe I'm not the best type of angel investor. I mean, I had some really good results. So it's not about results. It's more about what brings me joy. So what
Mm.
actually brings me joy is doing things my way and then also learning about it and becoming better as a person. And hopefully then also building something great with a good team that I can then bring into something unique, right? So what I really love about Sky Mavis is that it changed the lives of every founder in the company, but also a lot of the early employees and also a lot of the community members that we had. And I want
Mm.
to do the same in Stendr. I think it's amazing to be able to bring people into a journey that can be something that's truly groundbreaking, both from like a ideological point of view, but also like from a capital point of view, where it can really change their lives and their families' lives. And that is actually very, very motivating to me. And it means that I can really give the extra effort as well. Kind of going back to what I said is, building a startup is super hard. I think if you make a small business, make a pizza shop or something, you're still going to be working like 12, 15 hours a day. So why don't you do that with something that's like the most ambitious thing that is within your kind of mental capacity to do?
And why do you think Europeans' relationship with money is different than Americans? Like every time that I ask about, let's say, about money in Europe, it's very, very different. But if you talk with an American, they have like no problems. Like, why do you think we're a little bit shy to talk about money?
No, I think it's a very cultural thing. Is like you usually don't talk about money because it's seen as almost like yeah, it's seen as bragging, so to say. But at the end of the day, like, if you're going to be a founder, you need to take that position. So I don't really have a
Yeah.
problem by saying, that I came off well. It's just mentioning numbers and those things. It doesn't really give me that type of joy. I don't have that. I don't need to prove those things. I guess a proof point for me is like I put $500,000 of my own money into Stendr immediately.
Mm.
And I'm taking that risk. And then we raised 5.4 million now. And yeah, I think those are better things, better proof points that you're staking something, putting your own stake into your own company.
And if you would be engaged in a high stakes negotiation for the future of your company, who do you call? Do you now have like a trusted advisor? Do you have like one person that always kind of brings clarity? how do you go about as an entrepreneur? As you said, you always try to learn from people.
Yeah, I think it's a different thing. I have different people for different problems, I would say. For Stendr, I have a small advisory board of people, and I guess I also follow entrepreneurs in my space. Now defense entrepreneurs who are kind of on the same journey as I am, and it's very different from Sky Mavis when we were like at the top of kind of the ecosystem there in crypto, because I know many of the people who, let's call it, they came up at the same time. And, when you're coming up in an industry as other great people, for example, Sandeep from Polygon, like he invested in Stendr, also angel invested, and also Yatsu from Animoca Brands, and, Sebastian from the Sandbox. Like these people I've known for, 7 years or so, like because we came up at the same time and we tackled a lot of the similar type of problems. So you can call them for specific entrepreneurial problems. For Stendr, it could be different. Maybe I need someone who's more defense specific. Maybe you're closing a candidate. What about equity compensation? So, I don't think there's one specific person who's like the end all be all. And then, of course, I have my wife, who's my closest friend and partner that, I can talk to about anything, which I think is great. We've been together for 13 years. So, we didn't have anything. And now, things are different. Definitely a lot of support there. But being an entrepreneur is definitely more of a lonely journey, I think, in many, many ways. So who are the people that you can ask and find good advice from? I think is very important to find your kind of crew who are in a similar stage as you are, right? And because a lot of the time you often try to grasp people that are like at very, very high stages, right? So, but they might be so far disconnected from your problem set. So right now we're in a pre-seed seed stage company, right? If I'm talking to a unicorn founder now, even though I've done that, they have a very different viewpoint on what is good for me right now, mostly because they're so far disconnected from the current problem set where I'm at right now. So that's why I think it's mostly useful to talk about someone who's like maybe at the Series A or seed stage, or like is relatively close to the problem set where you are at.
Right. And also probably like they can remember, because probably they solved the problems like 12 months ago and not 10 years ago. How important is like to find a good partner as an entrepreneur? You
mean
talked about your wife.
Someone who's like, I think it's hard to say. I mean, people are different, right? So to me, it's been very helpful to have my wife as my close friend and partner over the years, and building a family together, and like she's my life witness in a way. So she's seen when we didn't have anything, and I think that's really helpful. For others, but I mean, also I wouldn't be living in Norway if it wasn't for her. Now we have a kid here, so obviously things have changed. But I guess it's hard to say. I don't think a partner is going to fulfill you or anything like that necessarily. It's just another thing that's useful to have, and but it's not. I don't think it's necessarily going to make you a better entrepreneur in a way. Maybe somehow a little bit, but I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, find a partner, then become an entrepreneur. That's those things are not necessarily connected.
No, but
it's very personal.
And if we meet in 5 years and do another podcast, where is Stendr at?
Oh, I think Stendr would be a unicorn in way, way before that. If everything goes well, then for sure, beyond that, then we'll have a major position. Maybe we had made some rockets or something. The cool thing about defense is that, defense covers software, it's hardware, it's logistics, it's like biotech if you want, and it's also space, right? And that is, I think, what's most attractive to me about this entire industry is that it can go so deep depending on the capabilities that you have in the team. And how motivated are the people that you have in the team to build something that's very ambitious and grand. And then you have to tie that into like, okay, versus speed and focus. Like, so the very, very high ambitious, but very, very kind of focused at the start. And then you have that, okay, this is where we're headed. So that to me is incredibly fascinating to think about. So hopefully within 5 years, we'll have as many capabilities internally that we can build the most impactful thing that is needed by our governments at any given day. That's what hopefully by then we are able to sit at the table and say, all right, if they want us to make something, then we're going to say, okay, we can make it faster. We can make it cheaper and safer than anyone else. That's it. That's what I want in 5 years.
Awesome. Aleksander, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so happy that you're actually using all your know-hows, capabilities, and also capital to protect Europe. Very much looking forward, maybe to, if you guys have a video to send us on the test that you will be doing, and happy to talk in 5 years and talk about the success you've had.
Yeah, I'll send you the video. We're testing tomorrow. So. All right.
Wonderful.